Good morning, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. It is indeed Masters Thursday. It is indeed one of the most anticipated sporting events of the year, potentially one of the most anticipated sporting events in recent years if you're a big golf fan. But somehow it's been overshadowed this Thursday morning after Liverpool last night. A truly incredible performance at Anfield, beating Manchester City 3-0 in the Champions League quarter-finals. I'm joined in studio by Darren Cleary. Very good morning to you, Darren.
Good morning, Al.
You're not a Liverpool fan or a City fan, are you?
No, I'm not.
Just a neutral observer who was completely enchanted with last night, I assume.
Just a man who enjoys seeing a great team decimated by a team that no one expected him to do anything.
Yeah, and a great team bus decimated as well, which of course is the main reason why this all happened last night.
The team bus will be the one we're told about for a while. That was the real secret to the success. But I think this probably takes something away from the fact that City just looked a little bit off the pace. I think they underestimated Liverpool a little bit and got a bit shell-shocked for it. Yeah,
I think there's something in that. We'll get analysis from Garry Breen a little bit later on in the show to try and tell us what actually did happen to Manchester City. I think when you look at the overall kind of breakdown of the game, there was certainly a targeting of Trent Alexander-Arnold, and when it comes to young players, Jurgen Klopp really believes in them, and potentially, if injuries had gone a different way in the Liverpool squad last night, we could have seen an Irishman thrown in there and another young fella that Manchester City could have failed in terms of targeting, which is of course Conor Masterson, and he's someone we've been chatting about in the office quite a bit over the last couple of days because there seems to be a bit of a debate about where he's actually from. You're a dub and you're claiming him.
We're claiming him. We have to claim him. We need the local angle here in the off-the-ball Dublin side of the office. But he's from Selbridge. He played with Lucan United, has a pretty thick Dublin accent. He spoke actually to RTE after the game, and Tony O'Donoghue asked Klopp about him. He said, you know, this guy Conor Masterson, is he the real deal? And Klopp said, well, when I told him he was going to be on the bench, he said, no problem, I'm ready. So you Irish people, I don't know whether it's all of you, but he's certainly a very confident young lad. Then he was speaking afterwards to Tony and he just said it was unbelievable. But at the same time, even if you're not that confident, you have to get out there and pretend to be confident. It's a shame he didn't actually get the chance to get on, but still massive to think that you'd have enough faith to have him there.
100%, and hopefully there will be an opportunity for him maybe towards the end of the year. If Liverpool manage to qualify, you'd like to think they will qualify as a result of the 3-0 last night. Then there'll be Premier League opportunities as well.
You can't jinx it like that.
Well, you absolutely can, because you look at Liverpool last night and you think to yourself,
that's something that someone who's never watched Liverpool play ever would say.
Well, no, it's actually somebody who's watched Liverpool all season and thinks to themselves, there is no way this Liverpool team does not score at the Etihad. Surely they score once at the Etihad.
As Brendan Rodgers famously said, 3-0 is a very difficult lead to defend.
When you're Liverpool, I guess it is.
When you're Liverpool, but absolutely.
My point is, it will become a 4-something lead. Manchester City will need to score 5 goals to beat Liverpool at home.
You've gone full Hamilton.
Full Hamilton. And what happens now, Darren, is that Manchester City need 5 goals.
A goal would have made it very, very interesting for City last night. But the weird thing was, the longer it went on, it looked like they were more likely to concede than score. It was such a strange performance from City because I don't think we're used to seeing them that disjointed and just kind of struggling to make things happen. They were second best nearly all over the pitch, and it was something I don't think anyone was expecting, and you could tell Guardiola's frustration by his body language on the sideline. He didn't see it coming at all. There's a little bit of, I suppose you'd call it, really silly analysis this morning. Like last night, I think the consensus of the esteemed panel was that the cult of Guardiola, the mask has slipped and he no longer is this untouchable guy. Then I was even surprised to see Roy Keane on ITV coming out with the line that City aren't a great team.
Really? I missed Roy Keane actually.
City aren't a great team yet. They're a long way to go if they want to be a great team. I just think it's very knee-jerk reaction to one, granted, I suppose you'd call it a massive slip-up in a huge game, but at the same time to suggest that you throw the baby out with the bathwater, it's a bit extreme, I think.
Yeah, the other big theme from last night was just Anfield and how unbelievably intense that place was. Even just from watching it on television, you could almost feel the atmosphere coming through the TV. And in the space of a couple of days, really, you've had Thomond Park on Saturday create this amazing atmosphere for Munster. Again, something which I wasn't there for, but you could almost sense through the television. And then last night at Anfield, like it's been a long time since I remember any European atmosphere being so tangible through a television screen.
But you could imagine the sheer intimidation. You'd imagine footballers are a little bit better at coping with that because they're used to hostile atmospheres. But just watching the scenes, and even before stuff was hurled at the bus, I just wouldn't have fancied being on that bus. You got guys hanging out of scaffolds. You've got this wall of noise and colour and smoke. And it was just incredible to think that, you're right, tangible is the perfect word to describe it. It's like something you can pick up and bottle and feel, because it really makes a difference. And we kind of we laughed this morning that Liverpool fans will be quite unbearable for the next few days, but at the same time, they do bring something usually special to football, especially on big nights like this, where they really add to the occasion. It's a huge occasion without the fans, but when you watch what they brought to it, you probably can't underestimate the impact that would have had, even though professional footballers in City would be used to hostile atmospheres. I think there's something to be said for that 12th man thing.
100%. If you are a Liverpool fan, feel free to tweet us at Off The Ball or comment on the stream if you happen to be watching on Facebook or YouTube this morning. Even if you are an unbearable Liverpool fan, we can handle it for one morning, so please do get in touch with anything you want to get off your chest, even if you're not a Liverpool fan. Any thoughts on last night's game? We'll put a few questions to Garry Breen, even if you've got a few questions for him. He's coming up a little bit later on in the show at around 8 o'clock this morning. Also this morning, we're going to be looking ahead to the league hurling final, which is up this Sunday. It is Kilkenny against Tipperary. The more things change, as they say, the more they stay the same. So we're going to be previewing that with Jamesie O'Connor at around 8:25. Also at 9:15 this morning, we're doing our Masters preview. John Duggan will be joining us in studio. He's over the Masters every single year, and he's got some very good tips, I understand, this morning. We kind of brought up a few of them with Nathan Murphy yesterday, and we may remind you actually of Nathan's tips a little bit later on if they go along the same lines as John Duggan's this morning. So if you've got any questions for John, indeed, if you're thinking of having a bit of a flutter on the Masters, do get in touch, as I say, at Off The Ball on Twitter, or comment on any of the streams if you want to get in touch with us, and we'll pass on any questions you have for John. But right now, it is time for this morning's Backpages.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
It's Liverpool everywhere this morning, Darren, and I think we're starting with the Irish Independent.
Yes, Liverpool, spectacular win, no doubt dominates the Backpages. No real surprise there. 3 and easy for Reds, which pretty much summed it up. Easy was probably the word that permeates a lot of the coverage, in the fact that they made it look ridiculously effortless. They dismantled one of... Roy Keane doesn't think they're a great team, but they're the greatest team in English football this year. But they made it look so effortlessly easy in the way that they beat them off the park for most of the game. So that's the main story in the Irish Independent. Also a line on Rory McIlroy. I know it's time to deliver in Masters, and full house signs being prepared 5 weeks before Mayo Galway showdown, and that's in relation to the Connacht Football Championship.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be obviously no intercounty GAA for the next month after this Sunday. I wonder, is there going to be a story next week saying everything's sold out 4 weeks away from the Connacht clash on May 13, then 3 weeks out? Tickets are still sold out.
Still sold out.
I do wonder what the GAA media is going to actually reach for to actually create some sort of storylines. I think I made the point on a Monday show or Tuesday show that there could actually be a number of negative storylines that emerge, but clearly there's a positive one, I guess, after coming out now.
Sold out signs are always good, especially for local coffers.
Absolutely. Once we get through all the back pages, we are going to talk Diarmuid Connolly because there's a certain journalist who's penned an incendiary piece about Diarmuid Connolly, all to be revealed in just a moment or two, but we'll continue with the back pages. I think the Irish Times also leading with the inevitable this morning. Yeah,
and it's pretty much it's Oxlade-Chamberlain, the man that seems to get mostly pictured in this. City left singing the blues as Reds go on first half goal blitz. Again, one of the most I suppose stark reminders of what a bad spell can do is how quickly those goals came in that period. I think it was 18, 19 minutes of decimation for the first two. So it was really, really impressive. Again, a lot of the player ratings are 7, 8s and 9s for Liverpool, which really sums up exactly the scope and the scale of their achievement. I think guys who put together player ratings, it's a very unenviable job because you'll always piss off someone no matter what you give them. But 7, 8s and 9s, I've said there'll be a couple of Liverpool players that are pretty happy with their lot this morning.
100%, no question about it. There's another thing as well. I wonder, is there going to be an element of kind of insecurity about the Premier League now? It's like, look at that team that looked so kind of invincible.
And that's the knee-jerk stuff. That's the cult of Guardiola is over. That's they're not a great team stuff.
There's just a tad of insecurity.
Avoid that stuff.
Well, who knows? Maybe we've got ahead. Maybe this Manchester City team is a complete fluke and it was all complete luck throughout the start of the season. Who knows?
I genuinely think some of the highest paid and most respected pundits in the country, in the business in the UK and Ireland, they have their punditry made up. They know what they're going to say before it happens. They have some idea. Like, you think back to the Tottenham game against Juventus, and the storyline was either going to be, if Juventus won, oh, they're wily and they're experienced and they just know how to grind out a victory here. And if they didn't win, it'd be, they're too old, too many miles on the clock, couldn't do it against a hot young Spurs team with so many players in form. And then if Spurs didn't win, it was going to be a bottle job. So inevitably, despite the fact they lose a very, very tight game, we're told the bottle job kind of analogy. I just think it's real disingenuous to rely on the lazy punditry of, oh, well, City had a bad night, so therefore they're a bad team.
Yeah, no, I am being very tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but part of me wants to...
Are you on?
Part of me wants to see the downfall of an empire, and an empire has been built up in the space of 9 months, and I want to see it fall straight away.
Would you describe it as an empire already?
I think this Manchester City team is... I don't think people were getting ahead of themselves when they said that this is one of the greatest teams we've ever seen play in English football. In Premier League football. Maybe not in English football.
We've got to watch the extremes here.
To a certain extent. It's also extreme saying that everything is over and Manchester City were always bad and were always flaky at the back, because clearly that's not the case. But anyway, we will get expert views from Garry Breen on this.
You mean this isn't expert views?
Well, mine certainly isn't. Maybe yours has a little bit more kind of weight behind it.
Simply Red, my favourite and most simple headline of the day, comes in the Irish Examiner sports section. Irresistible Liverpool demolish City with stunning Anfield show, and it is that man, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, again, who dominates, and just kind of the forlorn looks on the faces of the City players really hammer home how difficult a night it was for them. Owen, what did you make of the goals?
Well, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's goal was absolutely sensational.
Yeah,
it was just perfect. It was, God, like, I wonder if you put Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain in the middle of a desert and told him to strike the ball just like he did, how far would that have travelled? Would it have moved perfectly above ground, like kind of a hovercraft almost? It's just the net ruined the ball.
Yeah, it could have gone forever.
Yeah, I was obsessed.
Actual motion strike.
Obsessed with the trajectory of that ball last night, and the bloody net stopped it in truly triumphant fashion. That was obviously the goal of the night. There's no question the other two don't stack up to it, but there was something ballsy about the third goal where it was like Liverpool didn't really need to go for it, but yet they burst down the wing. Mane got himself in that position, and it was completely fearless. Half-time came actually at a really bad time for Liverpool, despite the fact that they had kind of edged off, I think, mentally at around the 40th minute or so, where they started to look around and think to themselves, right, this thing is real. But even Jurgen Klopp saying before the game that you can forget about a clean sheet when it comes to Manchester City. The fact that they actually went out for the second 45 a little more streetwise and thought to themselves, right, a clean sheet is actually possible here if we keep our wits about us. That was ballsy as well, given what Klopp had said beforehand, because he would look like one hell of a hypocrite had City come back and got a goal or two back even. And
without completely trying to stir up the shop, because I think if you just rely on trying to stop them from scoring for the rest of the game, it can go really, really badly. I think, as well as being a great goal, I really like the redemption storyline and the fact that him coming to Liverpool, there were a couple of raised eyebrows. Why are we signing him? What does he have to offer? What does he have to bring? Has he done it with a big team yet? That, I think, will silence an awful lot of those doubters. I know you probably have your own view of him from his time at your club, but what do you think of the whole redemption of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain?
Well, I'm not sure, is it redemption? He was one of Arsenal.
There was an awful lot of doubters, though.
There was an awful lot of doubters.
But an awful lot of Arsenal fans that thought, good luck, Liverpool.
Yeah.
He didn't do much for us.
I think it was more kind of a fact that he played for Arsenal rather than he was Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, like utilised in wrong positions at times, wanted to play more centrally, was one of Arsenal's best players last season. So I don't think he's kind of overly achieved with that strike last night. It was obviously a wonder goal, and he is probably reaching a little bit if he's going to win a Champions League medal. I think if there's any Arsenal fans out there who aren't just delighted for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think you're a bit stupid, to be honest, because he clearly, every one of us would have made.
Were you sad to see him go, or did you think he needed to go?
He needed to go. I mean, it's such a disastrous place to kind of be developing at the moment, but that's a story for another day. They are playing tonight. We might preview that a little bit later on, Arsenal against CSKA Moscow, but certainly when it comes to football, as you can see with the remainder of your back pages there, it's all Liverpool this morning. Yeah,
and we go against the grain because after a couple of back pages with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, we've got the main man and City in ruins. City, are they in ruins?
I mean,
the tie is probably dead. Probably, perhaps.
It's one goal away from being dead.
If you watched Liverpool play before, maybe not. But City in ruins, I know that you have to make a captivating back page and splash on the Herald Sport. But bus attack Maher's brilliant Anfield victory for Reds. Liverpool ripped apart Man City, scoring 3 goals inside the first 31 minutes, sealing their Champions League quarter-final first leg tie 3-0 at Anfield. And they mentioned Conor Masterson. They've weighed in on this Dublin or Selbridge debate, and they call him a Dubliner. The Herald, of course.
Selbridge is in Kildare.
Yeah, no, but
debate over. Simple as that. He's from Selbridge. He played for Lucan United. Like, Tomás O'Shea is from Kerry. He plays for Nemo Rangers. He's a Kerry man. He plays for a Cork team.
Has a Dublin accent. Probably grew up, spent all of his time in Dublin.
Who cares about accents, realistically? Like, I'm not going to... Celbridge is kind of...
Like, Ronan O'Gara was born in San Diego. He's not a San Diego man.
I know, but it's different. I mean...
Is it, though? I think
he's
I
not
think he's
from
a
San
Dubliner.
Diego. Okay, Conor Masterson... I can't believe we're having this debate. He's from Celbridge. He went over the Dublin border to play for Lucan United. And he's come from the nursery that is Lucan when it comes to his footballing identity. You could call him a Lucan footballer, maybe, but a Celbridge person.
A Celbridge person.
The Star as well going with an unfortunate pun this morning.
Smashed. I think it's a great pun.
It's a great pun, yeah.
I suppose double meaning, I suppose. The bus was smashed up and City were smashed up too. It's got a great photo. I'm not sure if you can properly see it, but just we mentioned earlier on the noise, the colour, just the striking visual of seeing all that smoke. And I mean, I was watching some of the footage this morning of the longer kind of fan footage that didn't emerge last night of the City bus arriving, and it just looked so intimidating, but at the same time really, really enjoyable to be there. They created such a brilliant atmosphere, and at times you could see people trying to slow down the City bus. You've got guys kind of jumping in front of the bus for selfies, and police kind of pulling guys out of the way.
We can actually have a look at that now. Here is some of the Liverpool fans greeting the Manchester City bus as it pulled up around Liverpool 4 last night.
Great pictures.
It was interesting how Ilkay Gundogan after the game said it actually riled us up a little bit more in a positive way, that we were thinking to ourselves, this gives us a little bit more motivation to beat these guys. It didn't affect us one bit.
But that must throw you off so much, because I'm not so sure they've ever got a welcome like that to Anfield. This would seem very, very alien, because I know professional sports people try to wrap themselves up in routine, and that makes it easy for them. So they try to make it as simple as possible. When you go to Anfield a number of times and it's not like that, and you think, yeah, you breeze in, there's a little bit of traffic, you slowly come down the road, there's fans there obviously making a bit of noise, but that's completely alien and different to anything else you might have experienced on the way to Anfield before. So maybe he can't come out and outright say, yeah, you know, we were shitting it, but it's a strong chance. I mean, I'm watching those pictures and feeling a little bit uneasy. I don't think I'd feel particularly comfortable if I was on that bus. Then you walk in at Anfield, you're greeted by that wall of noise as well. I don't think you can underestimate the impact you had. You can't blame it on losing 3-0, but it definitely would have thrown them off in some way, I would imagine.
Let's hope there's no revenge mission from City fans next Tuesday, and that Liverpool obviously released a statement apologising on behalf of their fans last night, which is probably a smart move, and hopefully that is the end of it. Let's show you the back page of the Sun this morning. Anfield ambush reads the headline as the Liverpool headlines continue this morning.
Yes, Anfield ambush.
That's the Sun, sorry. Smashed as well. Pep's dream in tatters as Reds go on rampage. Yob Shame as City bus is attacked. We'll show you the Times as well this morning. You'll never guess what they're leading with on the back of the Times. Also Liverpool, spoiler alert, basically. There we go, Anfield ambush. Liverpool destroy City in first half. Apology after fans attack visitors bus. The Daily Mail then as well. Liverpool getting beaten once again, leading the way when it comes to the Daily Mail. Smashed again.
The third instance of smashed.
And I know, we've kept them all together. It's perfect planning right here. City pulverised on pitch and bus wrecked outside. You've also got the very sad news there of Ray Wilkins, a gentleman, a class act. My great friends. That's Brian Robson's column there in the Daily Mail this morning. The Racing Post is leading with the Masters on the back page. Punters piling into Poulter. Houston Heroics have seen Englishmen lift off in Masters betting, which is an interesting storyline. Of course, they're probably referring to the British market, and maybe there's a little bit of patriotism going on there. And backing our man Ian Poulter.
Definitely a bit of patriotism. Maybe misguided patriotism.
We might put that to John Duggan. He probably won't even entertain the possibility that Ian Poulter could potentially win the Masters, but we'll ask him nonetheless a little bit later on. And then finally, just to wrap up the back pages, it's across to some of the UK titles. And The Guardian goes with demolition job. Salah puts rampant Reds on road to stunning win over City. And the Daily Telegraph then finally is also leading with Liverpool this morning. Here's the front page of their sports section. Is it going to be smashed again? The tension is unbearable.
We've had 3 smashes.
Could it be? No, we're not. We won't get the front page.
Smash and grab was a good headline. Have I seen smash and grab anywhere?
Smash and grab actually hasn't led the way in any.
They smashed the bus and then they grabbed the goals.
They really did. Yeah, it's very, very true.
You can have that for free, papers. Although it's very late to give you that now.
Yeah, it really is. But we'll go with it. We can put it up on the Off the Ball. We'll put it. The name of the podcast will be Smash and Grab, and that'll be the section dedicated to Liverpool.
I'm surprised there's not more Master stuff. Obviously, you know, Liverpool are the big story of the day, but there seems to be maybe muted excitement towards the Masters this year. I think with so many interesting storylines, I thought it would have been more prevalent in the sports.
Really?
Maybe psyche on a Thursday. Yeah.
Well, I guess
Tiger's back. That's so huge.
Well,
even for the casual golf fan.
Yeah, I think the excitement is huge. I cannot wait for this Masters. It's the most excited I've ever been for a golf competition. But
why this one?
Because Tiger's back.
Is that it? Are you the same?
But also because of the level of Dustin Johnson, the level of Justin Thomas, the level of Jordan Spieth, the level of Rory McIlroy.
John Ram. Everyone loves John Ram.
Everybody loves John Ram, but people aren't even talking about John Ram because the rest of the big hitters are playing so bloody well at the moment, and it's going to be fantastic. Even if we didn't have Tiger, I suspect this might be one of the Masters I would have been most looking forward to anyway because of the Rory element. Granted, it is the first time in like 10 years we've only had one Irish golfer going to Augusta, so it's diminished in that regard.
Yeah, that's not great.
If we had Harrington and Lowry in there, it would just be a festival of golf. But I definitely don't remember.
Beautiful celebration of golf.
That's what it is, you know, a beautiful celebration of kind of retrograde ideals kind of all gathered around a Georgian town, which is kind of a little bit backward. But anyway, we might deal with that a little bit later on as well.
I make an unpopular revelation about my view on the Masters. The prize isn't that great. Like, I just think we all convince ourselves that a jacket is this wonderful, amazing thing. Explain it to me, Eoin. I'm a casual golf fan. I don't really get it.
You're part of the club. It's very prestigious to be part of the Masters Club because it's not like Fight Club, as in you should never talk about Masters Club, but it is a little bit like Fight Club.
You can never take it out of the club after your year with it.
Yes, and also you can never really ask to be in the club. Like, for example, Bill Gates is a member of Augusta National, and he would never have been in a position, no matter how many billions of dollars he had, he would never have been in a position to actually ask the people at Augusta, can you let me into the club? You know, I've got lots of money, I'll increase prestige. You've got to play it cool.
I'll literally give you $1 billion.
Yeah, you've got to play it cool, and you've got to be invited in. Winning this golf competition is an automatic invite into the club, into the locker, into whatever, Eisenhower's hut or whatever it's called, and you get this level of prestige, which is amazing. And like, I think that level of prestige is better than a claret jug. Just about, and a claret jug is still amazing. Like, the Masters is the be all and end all. It's the biggest golf tournament in the world. It is the pinnacle.
I understand the tournament and the history with it, but I just think the actual physical prize of a jacket. At
least you can wear a jacket. You can't, if it's cold outside, you can't wear a trophy.
You don't get to keep the jacket. You got to give it back after the year. I read 500 words today on Garcia, worried the fact that he'd grease-stained his jacket.
I would be worried too.
It's a jacket.
I wonder, has anybody ever got dry cleaning on their green jacket?
He tried to get dry cleaning on his jacket, and that made him nervous. He said he waited outside the dry cleaner in his car until it was done to go back in and be like, is my jacket okay?
I would be nervous too. We're going to chat about that, as I say, later on with John Duggan. There's going to be so much Masters content over the next 4 days here on Off the Ball on all our digital channels. But there's one more thing I wanted to chat to you about, Darren, before we let you go this morning, and that is Diarmuid Connolly, because you penned this article for offtheball.com. You can hop on now and read it if you've missed it. Diarmuid Connolly's continued absence a cause for concern for Dublin supporters. Is it a surprise that the most scrutinised player in the country could grow disillusioned with the game, asks Darren Cleary, which is you, Darren. And yes. When I say it's an incendiary article, I was being sarcastic. It's kind of a measured take, I guess. When it comes to national media, there seems to be, certainly if you judge by Off the Ball's mentions, seems to be an anti-Dublin bias, particularly when it comes to Diarmuid Connolly. So it's good to have some pro-Dublin bias when it comes to Diarmuid Connolly. Sum up the article.
Basically, we don't really know why Diarmuid Connolly isn't playing at the moment. Rest is the word Jim Gavin has used a couple of times. John Small met the media as well before the Alliance League final, and he had the unenviable job of going to bat and said, well, Jim said it's a rest, so it must be a rest. So in the absence of any real information, of course, rumours are flowing, and that's the worst kind of fake news. So I tried to get some form of information. Naturally, anyone I tried to talk to told me nothing, and anyone who would know him at St. Vincent's would just say he hasn't been around for the last couple of weeks. Trying to figure out exactly why the most talented footballer in the country and one of the most talented footballers of his generation has just decided not to play football, I think is really, really interesting. The word rest doesn't really tally when you consider how little football he's actually played this season. It would be wholly more able for me to accept if he's just maybe needs a break from the game, a break from the scrutiny, a break from being what he has been for the best part of a decade, and that is the most targeted player on the pitch and probably one of the most written about players off the pitch as well.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I completely buy the idea that maybe we're all reading into this a little bit too much. Maybe he's just a guy who's had unbelievable success and just wants to take a step back for a while. The one thing is, he is in this sort of spot in his career, kind of like Gooch was at the end of his career, where there's just that one thing missing, and it's that Player of the Year awards, that final stamp of approval that Diarmuid Connolly was the best player in any one given season, an immortality of sorts, where people align a great Dublin team with a great individual performance, which is very hard to do with great teams. So maybe there's an element of that. Like when you say he's won it all, if you get really down into the nitty gritty of it, there is still that one personal accolade left for him to actually pick up, but I'm sure that's not really around. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy who gets motivated by those sort of awards.
But all the players will say that, and they'll all lie to your face about it, because in WhatsApp groups with their mates and with their teammates, they will, on the day the All-Star nominations are announced, they'll all be talking to each other. They of course put massive stake in what it is. Like every player will tell you at the end of their career, they'll tell you how many Leinster medals they won, they'll tell you how many Connacht medals they won, but up there as well, they'll tell you how many All-Stars. I think it's almost like this self-loathing Irish thing that you try and gloss over your individual achievements, where if someone gives you a compliment, you'll try and deflect it. It's like, oh, congratulations, you've won an All-Star. Oh yeah, but sure, 14 other lads won All-Stars as well, and sure, I probably wasn't even the best player on my team. Guys are just too quick to maybe diffuse it. I would think a lot of the Connolly stuff is, I would suggest he gets scrutiny that is reflective of his position in the inter-county game, being one of the most talked about and one of the most talented players in the country, but that's not reflected in the individual accolades. He's done it all. He's won 5 All-Irelands, 10 Leinsters, whatever he's won with Vincent's as well, All-Irelands, clubs, Dublin's, provincial medals, but the barrier, or the kind of the column in his achievements, it's always missing the individual accolades. 2 All-Stars for his career seems criminally wrong. I can't understand how he's had such little individual recognition, given the fact he's widely regarded by even his biggest detractor that he is the best player to play the game in the last 20 years maybe. Yeah.
Well, you've opened up a can of worms there, which may be a debate for another day. The last 20 years maybe is something I would strongly disagree with.
10 years?
Maybe. Like, let's agree to disagree for the time being, because we need to move on to Liverpool, Manchester City. Diarmuid Connolly, is he the best player of the last 20 years? Feel free to leave your comments below. I'm sure most
He deserves more All-Stars.
I agree with that. 2 All-Stars. If 2 All-Stars is Diarmuid Connolly's lot, then that is a criminally low number for Diarmuid Connolly, because everybody will agree that he is the finest player and one of the finest teams we've ever seen play Gaelic football. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, Darren, but as I say, check out the article at offtheball.com if you want to read more from Darren Cleary there. But now we're talking Liverpool, Manchester City with Garry Breen, but before that, we'll pay you our tribute to England legend Ray Wilkins. The former Chelsea and Manchester United midfielder passed away yesterday at the age of just 61.
My mum, she has a go at us if we play bad. And
what sort of things does she say to you, though?
She just say we play bad, and she quicken yourself up.
And what do you say to her? Do you take any notice of that?
Just a bit, yeah, not too much.
Sagers is coming and gets there. It rolls for Ray Wilkins. Oh, beautifully done.
Butcher, back with Wilkins. Absolutely magnificent from Ray Wilkins.
Wilkins in the end. And the chip was perfection. A lovely goal by the Chelsea skipper.
Ray Wilkins, famous for his guidance rather than his goals, but a sweet striker of the ball when the fancy takes him. Ask Bruce Grobbelaar. Rooted by the sheer velocity of the shot.
Yes, Ralph, the big orange fella ran in from the left, and he gives him a good old slapping.
Alongside me then is Ray Wilkins, and certainly memories revived for you as well today, Ray, of those marvellous matches you played in the Milan derbies.
Yes, no question about it. Good afternoon, everybody. And Alverston's made a run from the back, and Wilkins has trailed one, and that's absolutely magnificent. Ray Wilkins has put Manchester United in front with a superb goal.
I'm lost for words, Ralph. Absolutely terrific.
Yeah, desperately sad news there yesterday. Ray Wilkins passing away at the age of just 61. You can listen back to our Off the Ball Football Show podcast for more on that from yesterday. You can check that out at offtheball.com on any of your Android audio apps, or most of all on iTunes or whatever you use for your podcasts. But now, though, we are turning to last night's incredible scenes at Anfield as Liverpool smashed Manchester City 3-0. Garry Breen, a very good morning to you. How are things?
Very well. Good morning.
Well, like, where do we even start with that? It was absolutely mind-boggling. There was always the potential, though, wasn't there, that Liverpool could do something like this to Manchester City, but actually seeing it happen, I think we were all just rubbing our eyes a little bit, weren't we?
It was fantastic. I mean, so often these big games have built to be something, and invariably they disappoint. You just felt this never was going to, because as in boxing, great styles make great fights, and the styles of both teams just suited one another. We talked about the amount of goals we'd seen in the 2 previous games. I think it was 12 goals. Now suddenly it's 15 goals in 3 games. But Liverpool's first half performance, those first 30 minutes where they blew Manchester City out of the water, were just incredible to watch.
What was so impressive about the way they performed, other than the fact that they were so clinical? A belief, a desire. I think that ultimately comes from the fact that they're the only team who have beaten Manchester City already. I think there's also the belief that Manchester City, as good as they are probably tailor-made for the way that Klopp sets his Liverpool team up. But nevertheless, you're talking about quality players, Manchester City, who've just brushed aside every challenge throughout this season. And for Liverpool to have such belief, obviously that comes from the manager, that comes from the atmosphere that's built in the stadium. We know about iconic European nights at Anfield, but it was just everything you wanted this game to be and more. And it is an amazing result, but you still don't think this tie is over because of the quality of Manchester City. But nevertheless, Liverpool must be thinking they've got almost a foot in the semi-finals of the Champions League. So when Jurgen Klopp sets up his side yesterday, you mentioned there that City are tailor-made for this Liverpool performance sometimes. What is Jurgen Klopp looking at? What exactly is it about Manchester City that makes them so exactly suited to this Jurgen Klopp style of play? I think ultimately it's Jurgen Klopp probably looks at Pep Guardiola's style of play and the fact that he's been the most successful manager against him, taking on his iconic teams at Barcelona, the giants of Bayern Munich, and he's been able to get results. That's carried on into the Premier League. That's carried on now into the Champions League. But I think he looks at it in terms of the way that they want control possession. He doesn't get embarrassed by the fact that they don't have a lot of the ball. Liverpool as such, even if they're at home, they don't feel they have to make the run. And he suggested that it's not about having a perfect performance, it's about having a perfect result. And even Guardiola in the build-up to the game had suggested that this is his most difficult opponent because he knows his team are set up for Liverpool's counter-attacking pace, the quality they have. And it's all well and good saying about a template to beat Guardiola. And we've seen it with Barcelona teams. You would have identified how weak they were central defence in terms of could you get at Mascherano, but you couldn't because you just didn't get the ball. So it will be likewise last night. If they don't have the ball, they can't really hurt them. If they don't, more importantly, have the players to take advantage of those very few chinks in the armour. But Liverpool certainly had that last night with that front three and even the midfield three. In terms of the energy, I think a lot of question marks were raised about Milner playing, Henderson, maybe lacking a little bit of guile in there as such. But the three of them alongside Oxlade-Chamberlain dominated that midfield and just didn't give Manchester City an opportunity to breathe. Obviously the Liverpool pace is something we've seen all season. It's very, very hard to stop no matter how quality aside you are. But it seemed that Manchester City yesterday took an element of pace out of their own game in a bid to stop Liverpool's pace. Absolutely. I mean, that really surprised me, those team sheets, when they initially came in. Bearing in mind Sterling, and we're not talking about a young player, we're talking a player who's evolved this season. He's been amongst the goals. I think he's got 21 goals already this season. And if you look at any vulnerability about Liverpool in terms of countering their pace that they have, it's probably playing behind their fullbacks who like to get in advanced areas. We'd identified that Alexander-Arnold would be exposed by Sane on that left wing. And Manchester City obviously looked to go for him, but he played exceptionally well, the young man. But to play Gondwan instead of Sterling on that right wing just allowed Robertson an opportunity to attack at will without having to stay honest, knowing that Sterling's pace would hurt him in behind. And when the team sheet come in, it surprised me, but I still looked at it and thought, well, Guardiola is not selecting the team to protect his team against Liverpool. He's identified that is a way of beating this Liverpool team, comfortably dominating that midfield area. But it was a very, very surprise selection, and I don't think it paid out for him. Was there an element at all about protecting Raheem Sterling going back to the cauldron that is Anfield on a Champions League night? No, I don't think so. I think a lot's been made of the fact that as soon as Sterling plays in a game at Anfield, it just raises the crowd. But I don't think they needed that. The Liverpool crowd were going to be there for their team no matter what. And I was surprised because for a young player, Sterling has got a lot of mental strength. He's got a thick skin. He always wants the ball, even when he's not playing particularly well. And that was what really surprised me, that the decision was made not to play him, because I thought he was tailor-made. He would have been dying to come back to show the reason why Liverpool. And I know the cries are of that he's agreed. It was money-based, but he can look round and say, no, listen, I'm going to win the Premier League title here. I'm on the cusp of a magnificent team that's gone on to do something special.
But Liverpool literally blew all that out of the water.
Yeah, we might come back to that in a moment. There is a few comments coming in about Manchester City and I guess the supposed greatness of this team, and I guess there's a lot of people getting ahead of themselves this morning. But before we do all that, I just want to kind of chat about Liverpool's defence for a moment. You mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was absolutely sensational last night.
He was.
And it just makes it so much more highlighted this morning, isn't it? Because they clearly took Leroy Sané and they were like, you're going to target this kid and you're going to kill him, and the opposite happened.
Exactly, and I think the worry going into the game was that Gomez had got injured on international duty for Liverpool. Nathaniel Clyne, although he's back amongst the squad, obviously he's not ready to start a game of this magnitude. And you're quite right. I think Liverpool fans, as much as they like him going forward, Alexander-Arnold would have identified there is a weakness. We've seen it on Saturday. Zaha continually runs in inside him, and he gets too square of his winger. He doesn't sense danger quick enough. We've seen Rashford kill him at Old Trafford, similar. And then when you think of how good Sané has been and how direct and how incisive he is in making those runs from outside inside, you feared for him. But he rose to the challenge, and it suggests that he's got an ability to make a big career for himself, that he knows he's under the spotlight and he could still make and produce a performance the way he did. Listen, there are still deficiencies in his game, but there are with all young fullbacks as such, but certainly he can take a lot of pride in his performance last night.
As a unit as well, I guess there is something impressive about Liverpool, because when you've got a player that young playing at right back, you've got to have some sort of direction, I'm sure, coming from the middle. And does credit have to go to Lovren and Virgil van Dijk as well for his performance?
Well, yes, I think that's par for the course. So any young fullback needs his support, needs advice, needs a bit of cajoling, information from his centre-halves in terms of getting into good early positions. Certainly for Alexander-Arnold, whose career as a young player is more of a midfielder than a fullback. So certainly they will take credit for it. I think Van Dijk has added presence back there. Of course he has. And the very fact that Sterling wasn't picked there, if Van Dijk weren't there, I have no doubt Sterling would have been picked there to try and expose Liverpool at centre-half. But they probably felt that he had the pace to cope with Sterling if he got in behind Robertson. But Lovren, who's taken an awful lot of stick, and I'm not surprised that he's performed well on the night. The problem with Lovren is that he lacks the consistency required to play for a club like Liverpool. I've no doubt on one-off performances, as he proved last night, he can be dominant, but they're just few and far between at a club like Liverpool.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned consistency there, and that was certainly one of my thoughts last night watching them, that here's a group of players that are overperforming, and if they manage to do this on a consistent level, then they're away in a hat. They could challenge for the Premier League title, no question. And then you think about the atmosphere that was there at Anfield last night, that potentially these guys are the opposite of players that crack under pressure. In fact, they need this huge atmosphere for them to be focused in and, I guess, find that consistency within a 90-minute performance.
Yeah, listen, you talk about atmospheres and how it elevates you as a player. Of course it does. And it's an iconic stadium, Anfield. Of course it is. There's a lot of pressure attached to playing with it. And I think that pressure maybe comes from that you have to perform, as we just said, week in, week out. But on those one-off occasions, European nights, similar to playing for Ireland at Lansdowne Road, the crowd elevates you to another level. And they certainly produced it there. And there was no surprise. I mean, a lot's been said about the atmosphere prior to the game. We don't want to see bottles thrown, but certainly that intensity is what you want to associate with big European nights. Listen, there's a fine line, and Liverpool supporters, some of them, not all of them, have crossed it last night in terms of battering the bus with bottles and what have you. But I still want to see that intensity. I still want to see the drama leading into the game, because it heightens everything. And I mean, it was incredible. Those Liverpool supporters were fantastic inside the stadium in terms of the atmosphere they created. And people may think that Manchester City wilted under it. They didn't. They started the game particularly well. They had the ability to control games and negate the supporters, but the supporters were having none of it. They knew that their team would see little of the ball early on, but that didn't stop them. That didn't make them quiet. They drove that team on. Yeah,
there's two things there I want to pick you up on, and the bus is one thing. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But just in terms of City's start to the game, like, explain to us what City were doing at the start of the game, because they were clearly the more impressive side in the opening 10 minutes, and how Liverpool managed to kind of turn that tide to a certain extent.
Well, the goal more than anything turned everything, because Manchester City would have felt comfortable about themselves, dictating play, as we've seen so often. I think Liverpool were comfortable as a team in terms of the tactics that their manager gave them, not to panic. Listen, don't let pride get in the way. Don't let the atmosphere affect you so much that you go tearing out after Manchester City and leave little gaps behind them. Liverpool were disciplined. The back four was sitting in there. The midfield three were protecting them very well. And I think you've got to give a special mention to Firmino as well. We know about his attributes as a centre-forward, but he kept dropping into midfield and making an extra man, and they're rushing Manchester City, not giving them time on the ball. And that's the problem, that Manchester City felt that as good a players as they are, they weren't allowed to develop that momentum, that rhythm that we've seen so often punish teams this season. And I just thought it was fantastic. I think it was such a mature, disciplined performance. It was the heavy metal football we associate with Klopp, but there was a lot of control within that. And sometimes as a player, that's difficult because you can get carried away with the emotion of the crowd. You just have to have that little bit of a calming influence around him. And I think they executed the plan brilliantly.
Yeah. How important is it to have somebody like Roberto Firmino in front of you as a midfielder when you're someone like Jordan Henderson or like James Milner? Because I guess they can drop deeper again, knowing that there's kind of more of a press going on at the front half of their own half. And you could see it in the goal, in Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's goal, the fact that James Milner is the man who makes that interception.
Oh, listen, Firmino does a magnificent role, and he's an unorthodox centre-forward in terms of what he does for Liverpool, but he's the perfect one for Jurgen Klopp in terms of his system. And you're right, I think centre-forwards, if he does that role in terms of dropping into midfield, just to put a little bit of pressure on the deep-line Manchester City midfielder, it just allows you as a midfield three then to sit in. Because if he doesn't do that, it just sees that Silva will get his head up, Fernandinho will get his head up, and then they'll start seeing pictures, and they'll have 2 or 3 seconds longer than you would normally want them to have. And if they have that time, they're going to punish you. I think if he doesn't do that, I think the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, certainly Henderson, would feel that they have to go out of midfield and press the ball. And in doing so, there's space created in that 10 area that Manchester City exposed so well. So he played a massive role.
And Oxlade-Chamberlain, as I mentioned as well, with that goal. But interestingly, I guess the thing we can take ahead to the second leg is his role in the second half when Mo Salah goes off. They obviously lose something when Mo Salah goes off. There's no question about that. But Oxlade-Chamberlain in that right-hand role, are they then losing something in midfield with the bursting runs of the Ox through the middle?
Well, I think they'll probably make a decision. It'd be fascinating or so intriguing now to see just how bad this injury is, because even when he went off at 3-0, you just felt the whole tie could change here. If it's a groin injury that leads him to miss the second leg or the back end of Liverpool's season, everything changes for Liverpool. And that's not to suggest that they're a one-man team. They're not. Of course they're not. But he's been sensational, and he's part of a functioning unit. He's the man who gets the goals, and he'll be a massive loss. You're right. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain is, at the moment, proving what Jurgen Klopp said initially when he signed Oxlade-Chamberlain. And at the time, Liverpool fans were saying, well, why are we paying £30 million for a player who's going to be on a free in the summer? He's identified that this was a player we needed right now. And I think he's made Arsene Wenger's role there look a bit redundant in terms of not producing and making his player go to the level that we're now seeing he's capable at Liverpool. Because Jurgen Klopp, as soon as he signed him, said he needs to add goals to his game. And he's done that at Liverpool, and he's going to continue to do that. But nevertheless, that was a sensational strike.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. As I say, we'll talk about the bus. Like, is it something that rattles a team like that? I mean, Ilkay Gundogan came out after the game and said it motivated us more for the match. Like, does it have a material effect on a team, especially a team like Manchester City, who wouldn't really be used to this sort of thing?
No, I don't. I genuinely don't think it does have a massive impact. I think De Bruyne said it after the game. Company was very vocal after the game, saying, "No, listen, this doesn't impact us. In fact, we love the atmosphere." We talked about bottles being thrown and glass on the bus being smashed. You don't want to see that. But certainly you want to see the smoke. You want to see the flares as such. As long as no one's getting hurt, there's no potential for anyone to get hurt. But they're the intense atmospheres you want to experience. You know, something that as a top player you normally associate with European nights. You don't see it domestically. You probably see it with big international games. We certainly saw it when we went to Turkey all those years ago in playoff games, Iran, those type of atmosphere. And as a player, you're thinking and looking around thinking, yeah, this is what I've dreamt about. This is what I want to see. And it doesn't affect them. Listen, we've seen top players. They can cope with this type of situation. I think they're used to it as such. But as a spectacle, watching the bus coming through, before the bottles were thrown, it just added to the excitement for me as a viewer watching it. And I just hope that it's something we don't see in terms of the danger potentially with bottles being thrown, and that's just the mindless idiots. But certainly the atmosphere going into the game was everything you associate with a big European nights with Liverpool in past against, you know, those big games against Chelsea.
So you're saying that basically if you're a player of that ilk, you're looking around, you're thinking, this is amazing, this is going to be, despite the fact that, you know, the bus could get damaged by the bottles, this is still an amazing atmosphere and the players should be thriving under this sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I think they would have been. I think listen, I would have loved the opportunity of playing such a high-profile Champions League game like that, and I can only associate it with big international games for Ireland. But when you're sitting on the bus, you're looking around and you're thinking, yeah, this is what we dreamed about. We know we're getting a stadium, the atmosphere is going to be, but this is part of it. This adds to the whole special thing. And I think also as a player, you probably look around at your teammates as you're going there thinking, come on, lads, let's have some of this. This is going to be quality.
Just one comment before we wrap up on one question about Conor Masterson. Just one last comment on Manchester City. Omar Al-Nourzi has asked, was the talk of Manchester City being the best ever Premier League team premature? I think he's getting a bit ahead of himself there no?
No, I don't think it is. I think in isolation, if you're talking about Premier League, we're obviously judging them as a Premier League team now in terms of being mauled literally by Liverpool in the Champions League. No, there's no doubt in that. If you're talking about a legacy as such and the great United team, the treble winning team of 99 who go on and win the European Cup, then yes, it's a difficult comparison. But the Invincibles of Arsenal didn't do anything in Europe that season. We've seen top teams for Chelsea, Mourinho's teams, not do anything in Europe. So don't judge them on that as such. If you're judging them in terms of isolation as a great Premier League team, without a shadow of a doubt, they're going to be considered one of the best, if not the best.
Yeah, and then one last comment. Maria Keena has said, looking forward to seeing Conor Masterson in the future for the Reds, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to seeing him in the future in the green jersey of Ireland as well. Like, how much would that have done for him last night, being on the bench in this cauldron that was Anfield?
Well, listen, in terms of your development as a young player, you want to expose kids to as much as possible for their learning curve. And to be part of that, we talked about the Manchester City bus, but imagine the Liverpool bus and he's sat there knowing that he's going to be part of the squad, travelling to this game. If I was a young player, and I would have had something similar, travelling with Jack Charlton's team as a young Ireland player, under 21 player, then going with the seniors, didn't get an opportunity to be on the bench, but it was on the thing. It made me want it even more. And you'd hope that young man is of the same mindset, that this is exactly what he wants. But take nothing away from him. For him even to get in the squad for a game of this magnitude suggests that he's hardly thought of. And I can't wait to see him, as you quite rightly said, playing more games for Liverpool, but more notably playing some games for Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. Will Manchester City be able to bring this one back next week, Garry?
If anyone can, they can. The only thing is that Liverpool have that counter-attacking threat, that if they get that away goal, it means that Manchester City have to get 4. I look at Liverpool's defence, I think that they're not the type of team, I think, who can sit back and soak up pressure. I think they'll have to go after them to a certain extent. I don't think they'll be kamikaze as such in terms of leaving themselves completely wide open. But I certainly don't think this game is over.
Yeah, certainly not. It's a tantalising prospect once again next week. Garry Breen, thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
So we're going to change to hurling at the moment now. We're going to talk to Jamesie O'Connor in just a moment ahead of the league final on Sunday. It is Kilkenny against Tipperary. But before all that, our own Eoin Sheahan was speaking to Brendan Maher ahead of that match on Sunday, as I mentioned. The Tipperary forward still believes the Cats are the nation's top team.
In my head, I look at it, I suppose, from since I've been involved from 2009 to now, Kilkenny are very much on top. It's 6-2 and 1 draw, I think, in finals. So hoping it'll be 6-3 after Sunday. But no, I've no doubt in my head Kilkenny have been number 1 for the last decade, and I think we've been number 2 based on titles won and provincial and even final appearances. But no, there's no doubt in my head that they still are number 1, and until somebody comes along and wins a number of All-Irelands and national titles, they'll be number 1.
Yeah, Kilkenny's Cillian Buckley was also speaking to Oisín Langan yesterday, and he was chatting about his recent idea of forcing a player who was fouled to take the free themselves.
There was a bit in one of the match day programmes this season with you calling for the people who were fouled to take the frees rather than having a designated free taker. I can tell by the laugh that you've been asked about this a bit. Were you just hopping the ball there? Were you being serious, or do you think that's a rule that could change things for the better?
No, not at all. That was a kind of a pen pal thing that was sent on to me before the Waterford game, I think. So I had the stereotypical answer that everyone gives, your 2-point sideline in my head, and I said we'll we'll try something different here. So just messing with TJ Reid about it. We're always winning frees and he's putting them over. So it wouldn't it be funny if we took a few frees back off TJ? But no, something like that will never come in. It's unbelievable skill in the game. The standard of free takers have brought to it. They're scoring up 90% of their frees now in games, which is crazy. You're even seeing goalkeepers becoming really important in free taking as well. So no, it was just to mix it up from the 2-point sideline answer, to be honest.
Yeah, Cillian Buckley there speaking to Oisin Langan yesterday. It is Tipperary against Kilkenny in the Division 1 League final this Sunday. We'll chat to Jamesie O'Connor in just a moment, but John Duggan is in studio, suited up for the big day, Masters Thursday.
Sunday best.
Owen,
you have to, dress appropriately, I think, for an occasion like today, the Masters, the 82nd Masters, and I think I probably watched 20 or 30 of them over the years, and it's just a fantastic sporting occasion. What plot lines, Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, some of the best players in the world, probably the best course in the world, and we just can't wait. It starts at 1:30 and everybody is just, it's a bit like Christmas Eve again. We have that conversation around Cheltenham, but for golf fans, this is just what it's all about.
I think there is, I'm not sure which is more penetrable for the neutral. Is it golf or racing? I would say golf, certainly, just because I'm a golf fan and not really so much a racing fan. But I think with the storylines this year, there's no question. It's like, here is one of the greatest of all time, and he's back in his pomp. There is a potential that we can actually see this guy winning the most prestigious competition in his given sport when everybody thought it was all over, when people thought he may never play the game again, and we have this potential, this tantalising prospect of maybe just one last Masters where we can watch this guy back at his best.
Well, I think what sports fans are wanting more of, Owen, is occasions. So Cheltenham is an occasion, Wimbledon is an occasion, Republic of Ireland soccer excursions to major championships are occasions, and the Masters has become an occasion for everybody back home to just they can't get enough. They want to have their little selection here and there, and they want to follow the great storylines, because the way golf evolves is it ebbs and flows. It builds up like a film over 4 days, and then to a crescendo on the Sunday when the leaderboard is changing like a railway station timetable. And then you have the fact that the Masters, the course at Augusta is a risk and reward course. Lots of water, if you're aggressive and it pays off, you can get eagles, 13, 15. And Tiger Woods, who 21 years ago won the Masters by 12 shots and changed golf and changed sport, really, in terms of the commercialism of sport, race relations, and just a new superstar globally for sport. Coming back after effectively not being able to walk, and then having well-documented personal problems. It's just a remarkable story, and the fact that he's actually even able to compete and contend is a miracle in itself, and the prospect that he can actually win a fifth green jacket, hard to fathom, but that is Tiger Woods, and that is why people would say, well, he hasn't won as many majors as Jack Nicklaus, but he is the greatest golfer of all time, and he will be the Pied Piper of golf, Owen, for the first 2 rounds, and he is the story this week. He is the story, whatever he does.
The one thing about the Masters always is kind of the restrictive television times, but the good news is that Tiger is one of the selected groups. Shock horror about that one. So you will be able to watch Tiger Woods in full, and indeed Rory McIlroy for his first round this afternoon anyway. But when it comes to Tiger, you mentioned it there with the pain he had just even standing up, and he talks about the agony he was in at the dinner last year and just trying to just sit down and get through it all while he was just going through this unbelievable pain. And it's doubly important for Tiger Woods that he's trusting his body, because he was never a guy who visualised shots anyway. He always judged it by his own body, and being able to trust his body, as I say, is kind of doubly important for somebody like Tiger Woods rather than somebody else who might visualise a shot a little bit more and taps a little bit more into the mental side of the game.
And he says he's got his speed back in his swing, which once again is pretty astounding. His press conference the other day, I watched it, and he has that coldness back. Somebody asked him, did we treat you harshly, given the way the world has gone in terms of presidents being a little bit out of the norm in terms of their personal behaviour? And he just dismissed the question. Has that little bit of killer coldness back, that steel. Maybe it's just his attitude towards the press, but 103 in the world, hasn't won it 5 years. But he said physically he is feeling as good as he did 7 or 8 years ago. Bear in mind, he won 5 times in 2013 and was Player of the Year. So that says a lot to me. He contended at the Valspar. He contended at Arnold Palmer's tournament, the Bay Hill tournament recently in Florida. So nobody knows Augusta better than Tiger Woods. He's won 4 times. Okay, he hasn't won in 13 years, but the course just really suits him. He's been playing very well in practice, had a couple of eagles playing with Phil Mickelson the other day. And yes, I think that he needed to feel, and I think he was pushing it, he needed to feel that he was right again, and I think he feels right. So now it's just really down to nerve, down to age, down to be able to concentrate and get it right for 4 days, and that's really the big question. Can he do it for 4 rounds?
Yeah, well, we will answer that question in a few moments. We'll get your tips as well for the Masters 2018. It may feel like the only show in town this weekend, but it's not the only show in town because it's another bumper weekend of sport, and the hurling final when it comes to Division 1 takes place on Sunday. It is the All Classic of Kilkenny versus Tipperary, and I'm delighted to say that Jamesie O'Connor joins us on the line now to preview the match. Jamesie, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Eoin. Morning, John.
So this week, James, I saw Eoin Sheahan writing in the Irish Examiner that the Kilkenny-Tipperary rivalry over the last 10 years is probably the best rivalry we've ever had in Irish sport, just in terms of great games, in terms of close contests, and in terms of the excitement as a neutral. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a fair comment. I mean, Cork-Waterford really lit it up, I suppose, in the Munster Championship. But in terms of, I suppose, the sheer calibre and quality of, particularly some of those All-Ireland finals between Tip and Kilkenny, I think that's a fair statement for Kieran to make, and it's one that's hard to argue with.
Yeah, you look back through like the last decade of the rivalry, and the league is almost as important when it comes to setting down markers in this rivalry as the championship has been. And you look at that Nolan Park clash 10 years ago, which was the last time Tip obviously went down to Kilkenny and won. Like, talk to us a little bit about that game. I know Seamus Callanan is the only surviving Tip player from that day, and he's probably not going to be around this Sunday. Like, that felt like a watershed moment in the journey of that particular Tipperary team, and granted, as I've just mentioned, not a lot of them are still around, but certainly in the psyche and the way we view Tipperary, that felt very, very important.
It did, I suppose, and Liam Sheedy as manager at the time knew, I suppose, what was required to beat Kilkenny, and the gap this was that the Tip had to bridge. But yeah, I suppose, look, Kilkenny have been the barometer for everybody, and I suppose, the rivalry is obviously there. I mean, there seems to be no end to the dislike that Kilkenny have for Tipperary, and probably vice versa. And that obviously has been reflected, I suppose, in the games, and any opportunity each of them get to put the other down. I mean, they're obviously going to take it. I think Brendan Maher was interviewed yesterday, and the reality is, I suppose, he's lost 3, I think, league finals to Kilkenny. Their championship record against Kilkenny isn't what they'd like it to be either, and maybe the balance of power has swung slightly now, and if Tip have their best 15 on the field, arguably at the moment, I think it's better than Kilkenny's best 15. But Tip could have won that game in Nolan Park earlier in the year, didn't. TJ popped up with a fantastic catch off the last puck out, popped it off to Richie Leahy, and Kilkenny did them again. So Nolan Park is not an easy place to go to, and I think it's important for Tip that they go there on Sunday with an eye to look at Kilkenny maybe been around later in the championship and putting one over on them.
Yeah, and how much of a factor do you think that Galway League final last year will have a bearing on Tip? Because that seemed like the moment it all changed for Tipperary in terms of the mood around the camp last year.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a setback, and they were so flat on the day, and I suppose hindsight is 2020, and maybe there was such an emphasis last year on putting back-to-back titles together and not repeating the mistakes that they'd had in the past, and maybe overtraining and maybe putting too much into it. The reality is that, listen, Tip came as close to anybody last year to beating Galway. There was only a puck of a ball in the semi-final, but I think they've learned from that, and I think Michael Ryan has really managed the panel well in terms of how he's approached the league. I mean, they've used, I suppose, along Kilkenny more players than everybody else. He's rotated the squad, and I think that makes for a happier panel, because in other counties players have walked away because they haven't got game time, they haven't been exposed to to those competitive games. And as I said, I think Michael Ryan has done a really, really good job in terms of increasing the depth, which is going to be important down the line, because Tip have 4 championship matches in 21 days. So I think Tip have been really smart, and Ryan has done a really good job in terms of I said, how he's shepherded his resources, and that only has to be positive heading into the championship.
You mentioned that Brendan Maher was speaking to the media, and in those comments this week, he referred to what you just outlined there, the fact that Tipperary kind of wore that crown of being All-Ireland champions not as lightly as they possibly should have last year, and they, to a certain extent, didn't handle it as well as they could. And this year there's just a little bit more focus on their own lives outside of hurling, that they're not as obsessed with retaining a crown, first of all, because they don't have a crown to retain, and second of all, there's just a little bit less pressure around this team, and it certainly seems that everything's in a much better place. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, because there's a full year of hurling to play, but should Tipperary become All-Ireland champions once again this year, it certainly seems they're better equipped as people to go and defend something like that.
I think that's a fair comment, and I think balance is the key. You know, whether it's your work life, your sporting life, college, whatever. You have to have the balance right, and from an education perspective, you've got the guy who it's all work and no playing. You've got the second guy who it's all sport and he's not devoting enough time to the books, and neither of them really is where you want to be. And I think that's what Brendan was referring to. I think in those comments yesterday, that maybe they got caught up in wanting to put everything into it and been at it 100 miles an hour at every training session. And I think that's just something that comes with experience. And I think Michael Ryan probably learned a lesson. The tip management learned a lesson from that last year, to the same extent that the players did. And they just, as you said, Owen, seem to be in a better place this year. And freshness is going to be hugely important as well. And I think Tip, there's going to be at least 2 rounds of the Tipperary Club Championship played before those guys head into the Championship, and the Tip Championship is behind. And I think it was with all that in mind that he was going to have to, as I said, have guys that he could go to, have guys that he could trust maybe heading into the Championship. And I think he's found an awful lot about some of the new players he's introduced: Alan Flynn, Willie Connors, Billy Sheehan, and these guys, Paddy Feehan. And Tip probably have more depth than anybody else, especially when you look at the players that still have to come back into it.
Without question, it's unbelievably exciting times for both sides. You mentioned the players that Tipperary have introduced, and you also look at the players who've stepped up this year, and Ronan Maher clearly is one of those players who already looks destined for an All-Star this year, playing in midfield. How impressed have you been with him so far in this league campaign?
Hugely, yeah. And I think with Brendan Maher beside him, Tip of a really formidable looking pair, and he just, obviously he was outstanding in 2016 and maybe didn't reach the same heights last year, but maybe it's just a change of scenery, but he's reveling in the open spaces out there and the freedom maybe that it gives him. And I suppose he, along with Jason Ford, as you said, Owen, have been 2 of the guys that have really stepped up and provided leadership. And while Ronan Maher has been fantastic, Ford has been a revelation, I suppose, really, and he's playing with a huge amount of confidence. Now, it's still, April. There's still maybe questions about, can he do it now in a big game on Sunday? But he used to be taking huge confidence with coming off a specific Skibbon campaign and how well he's played. And he's playing this with a huge amount of confidence. And that's another weapon for Michael Ryan to have up front.
Yeah, without question. Like when you mention kind of a different level of weapons that players have or that managers have, Brian Cody obviously has tons of them as well. And you alluded to it in your first or second answer there, that 35 players tried out in the league. Martin Keoghan seems to be the name on everybody's lips at the moment. He's been mostly impressive, just I guess from an offensive point of view. And we only get to see highlights of a lot of Kilkenny's games, that he seems to have been the kid that stood out. But there's many more of them as well, Jamesie, no question. And I guess there's an element that perhaps even Brian Cody is surprised with how well these kids have gone. They've gone straight into the deep end and they've swam.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose after 2016, I think Cody said that, they needed to maybe freshen up the team, but he didn't really do that last year. I mean, it was still a lot of the older faces, and I think there was a realisation maybe that, okay, they had to now start looking at maybe some of the younger crop. And I think he has to be thrilled with how that's gone. And, from day one, the attitude has been great. I mean, okay, on opening night they lost a really good game to Cork that they could have won. It was they were there right in it until Cillian Buckley got injured. There was a long delay and Cork just saw it out. So there wasn't really a whole lot wrong with Kilkenny early on. But yeah, I mean, these guys all have been winning the All-Ireland Colleges titles. Kieran's won the All-Ireland Colleges title this year again, and that standard is high. And Kilkenny just produce players, and their work rate. Those same Kilkenny values haven't gone away. And, considering as well that he still has Paul Murphy, Colin Fennelly to come back. I mean, I'm not sure what Richie Hogan's status is. I'm sure every effort has been made to have him ready to play some part in the championship. It's a great position to be in. And Cody has what he wants, a great spirit in the side. As I said, those same traditional values that have served them so well in terms of work rate, honesty, intensity, and they outfought Wexford on Sunday. And okay, Wexford may have been flat after the Galway game the previous weekend, but it was really impressive stuff. And on top of that, then you have, I suppose, look at TJ and Walter Walsh in particular, really standing up and showing leadership up front. So Kilkenny are in a good place, and after losing 2 matches, we again make the assumptions that they're in trouble. They're going to be fighting relegation, and look where they are. And Kilkenny haven't gone away, and we've got a reminder about that.
It seems as well that Kilkenny are a lot more streetwise this year, and we've always said Brian Cody never does tactics, but it seems all of a sudden Brian Cody does tactics.
Well, I think if you look at the 2 games they lost last year, Owen, to Wexford down in Wexford Park and to Waterford in the quarter-final, both those sides play sweepers. And, I think there's a realisation that you have to be more judicious with how you use the ball, and I mean De Boerke cleaned up in that game in Thurles last year. He was outstanding. Sean Murphy as well got on a lot of ball in the championship match. So I think Kilkenny have just wised up to the fact that we need to be more selective about how we use the ball, and certainly they've worked on it in training. You can see that the style they're playing, it's heads up hurling, it's playing those short passes, playing around the sweeper, and they did it really effectively obviously in Wexford Park last Sunday. So but they've good players, and good players can play that type of game. That short passing game does require a high level of skill, and Kilkenny just naturally produce players that meet that criteria. Listen, I don't think they're the finished product. I don't necessarily think we're going to make them favourites to the Ireland Championship, but they're going to be contenders. And whoever takes on Kilkenny in the Leinster Championship, will learn it, and Galway and Wexford and Dublin will be very mindful of that.
It sounds like you're favouring Tip for Sunday, Jamesie.
Yeah, I think, as I said, if it comes down to it, if Tip have their best 15 in the field and Kilkenny have their best 15 in the field, I think Tip have just have more quality at this point in time. But it'd be interesting to see what way Michael Ryan in particular lines out. I mean, does he start bubbles? Does he retain the faith in some of the newer guys? I mean, Noel McGrath didn't play at the weekend, Bonner didn't play at the weekend, but I just think that Tip's need might be that bit greater in terms of going to Nolan Park. As I said, some of those players have lost 4 league finals, 3 to Kilkenny. They won't want to lose another big game to Kilkenny and Nolan Park, particularly given the way events panned out down in Nolan Park earlier in the league. And I just think Tip's need might be greater, and they might do it.
Well, enjoy the game, Jamesie. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Sure will. Take care.
That is, of course, league final, the Division 1 league final that takes place on Sunday at 3:30. It is Kilkenny against Tipperary. Right, it is time to turn to our Masters tips now. We're going to chat to John Duggan once again in just a moment. But yesterday morning, Nathan Murphy joined us to give a rundown of his favourites to take home the green jacket this week at Augusta.
My 3 tips are Jordan Spieth, because he is quite simply the best player around Augusta. It's his 5th appearance. He's contended in the previous 4, and I know he's had a slow start, but he looked somewhat back to his best last weekend. I think he's going to win. Jason Day, who is also among the leaders in the betting. He's already won at Torrey Pines this year, kind of playing a different schedule, not playing that often. He's always moaning about being sick, been injured, but generally at the majors he turns up. He's gone close before. And the other one, my outsider, to bring it up to 100-1, Bryson DeChambeau, who's seen as a bit of a mad scientist. He's at about 80-1. He's played here once before, did all right. Not sure he's going to win, but he might contend.
I wonder, is that going to be prophetic from Nathan Murphy? Bryson DeChambeau obviously kind of came on the scene last year, or was it 2 Masters ago when he first played, and everybody was kind of completely bewildered by his different cuts on his clubs and stuff like that, that he brought science to the Masters?
He's precise.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a bit too soon though for Bryson.
I think so.
I'm not in the Bryson camp.
If you're on any camp at 80-1, I think you're a little bit mad, to be quite honest. But, each to their own. And we could be sitting here looking back at this. Nathan Murphy could be laughing at us on Monday morning. Who knows?
Ian Poulter won last week at 100-1. So
yeah, what is actually, before we get into Rory McIlroy, what is Ian Poulter's chances? Because on the back of the Racing Post this morning, it says punters piling into Poulter. Granted, it is a UK publication, so there's obviously a bit of patriotism going on there.
I think they're slim, to be honest. He, remember, contended at Birkdale when Porter Carrington won, but Ian Poulter has not proven it at the majors. He's past 40 now. I think he can contend, and obviously he's full of confidence, but in the business end of a major championship, I wouldn't trust Ian Poulter, no.
Rory McIlroy. It is the week where we always bring up 2011. It's just one thing that's always going to dog him for the rest of his career. Even if he wins a Masters, it'll probably be, even if he wins 10 Masters in a row, it'll be like, yeah, but remember that one time he choked?
Not at all. No, if he wins a Masters, it won't matter a jot.
Does he think about it? Of course he does.
I think he thinks about it, but I think he thinks about it less than people think he thinks about it.
Sure.
I think the fact that he won the next major, the US Open, was a major statement back then from Rory McIlroy. I think what's been more of an issue for him has been the fact that the last 4 times he's gone to Augusta, he's been chasing the career Grand Slam. And the pressure's been on, especially the first time after he'd won the PGA. But still, in those last 4 appearances, he's finished in the top 10 every time. So I don't think he thinks about it that much. I think he wants to get the monkey off his back. I think if he wins it, I think he will win the Masters at some stage, because I think the course suits his game. Then I think the floodgates will open. I just think Rory McIlroy, and he's my main selection this week, is just too good a golfer not to win the Masters and not to win more majors. And to me, what I've learned from watching golf for over 20 years is that natural talent is everything in golf. It's everything in sport, but in golf, it is everything. You have a lot of players who are very, very good players, but they're B-standard players. Rory McIlroy, since Tiger Woods had debilitating physical problems, in this era, Phil Mickelson I would consider of the Tiger Woods era, but in this era, Rory McIlroy is the most talented golfer in the world. And I think we saw that at Bay Hill with that magical 64. He's hitting the ball very well. He's been getting some advice from Brad Faxon, who was a great putter on the US Tour over the years. They played 9 holes in Florida last week. That to me is a good sign. Jack Nicklaus, of all people, who's won the Masters 6 times, 18 major championships, rates McIlroy as the favourite this week. And it's because he's hitting the ball superbly, and if he can putt well enough. And I think what would concern me slightly about him is the fact that he thinks he needs to be a bit more aggressive. It's just about when you're aggressive and when you're not aggressive. And he needs to just be strategic about that. And what's interesting is obviously the caddy as well, Harry Diamond on the bag, first time at the Masters. Will that be a positive in that it might relax Rory a bit more, having his best mate in the bag, or will it be a negative in terms of the nuances of what you need to do with the yardage book?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And you mentioned there the way Augusta suits Rory McIlroy, clearly suits somebody like Jordan Spieth as well. What exactly does the Masters suit when it comes to attributes?
Well, you don't really need to be that accurate off the tee. They call the rough the second to cut because of all these like idiosyncratic rules at Augusta, where they call fans patrons. So you don't need to be that accurate off the tee. You need to be very good with your approach shots, your irons, and you need to miss the ball in the right spots if you're going to miss it. So you need to get the ball on the right side of the green. The greens are just lightning fast. They're dining room tables, and you need to have a magical short game. You need to be able to putt well. But the key stats really, Eoin, are hitting the greens in regulation. That's a key stat with your second shot. It's a second shot golf course, and then scrambling, getting up and down around the greens, and then making those crucial putts. So Jordan Spieth is just a putter out of this. He hasn't putted very well this year, but he's just a putter from another era, another world. He has the X factor. This guy's won just as much as McIlroy. He's won 3 of the 4 Grand Slam majors. He's only 24 years of age. He has just something about him. And I think he'll gain great memories from going to Augusta, finishing tied second, first, tied second, and tied 11th. He's led, of the 16 rounds he's played at the Masters, Jordan Spieth, he's led for 8 of them. That is just
it's incredible.
And he cannot be discounted this week. He is the worthy favourite, Jordan Spieth, for me. Played well at Houston last week, but I do think McIlroy and Spieth, I wouldn't put anybody off them.
You mentioned the dining room table nature of the greens. Like marble floors is the usual analogy, isn't it? And I guess this week it's going to be more so, isn't it? Because the conditions seem dry and it hasn't rained in days.
Yes, and it's not going to rain, I don't think, until Saturday. There'll be thunderstorms apparently then, and there's not going to be that much wind this week, so it'll be firm and fast, which is great. We're probably looking at a winning total of between maybe 9 and 12 under par. There's lots of form horses coming into the tournament. Justin Thomas, look at Justin Thomas, USPGA champion, a first and a second and a fourth in his last 3 starts. He is probably the best player in terms of how he's playing in the world at the moment. Never breaking 70 at Augusta though. Dustin Johnson is the world number 1, but does he have the imagination to win around Augusta? Came into the tournament in brilliant form last year, then had an injury, which made him miss the tournament. That'd be a good redemptive story. Justin Rose lost in a playoff last year. He's been playing very well. Phil Mickelson at 47. He would be the oldest winner of the Masters. He's won 3 green jackets already, won in Mexico recently. Jason Day showing a little bit of a return to form that made him the best player in the world. Sergio Garcia's got no pressure on him after winning the Masters last year. Henrik Stenson, no top 10s in 12 Masters starts. That would probably count against him. Matt Kuchar only missed 1 cut in 11 Masters starts. So there's plenty of players that we have in contention. Patrick Reed has playing well recently. John Ram was 6th at halfway last year. Blitzed the Irish Open field, has gone from 137th to 4th in the world within the year. I think he's 3rd right now. So does he have the mental temperament to win the Masters? Thomas Pieters, 4th last year, could bounce back in terms of his form and light up again around here. Hideki Matsuyama has had a hand injury, but his record in the Masters over the last 3 years has been stellar. And Ricky Fowler and Bubba Watson, great pals that they are. Bubba's won twice and has had a great season, but he is mercurial.
He had a disaster last year as well.
Yeah, and Ricky Fowler, probably the best player himself or Matsuyama not to win a major, but I would be a little bit worried about the fact that he's talking about his irons not being dialed in, and he didn't play very well at Houston at the weekend.
Yeah, it's the one thing I'll pick you up on there was kind of at the start when you mentioned Dustin Johnson. It's interesting that you mentioned that he perhaps doesn't have the imagination to win the Masters, and John Ram was saying this week that there's 5,000 ways to win most golf competitions. When it comes to winning at Augusta, there's probably 50,000 ways to win.
Yeah, I think Padraig Harrington was interesting a few years ago when he watched Phil Mickelson win the 2006 Masters, and he said Padraig Harrington ended up going around the Masters with the spirit level, and he said it's just the most it's the tournament that tests. I know the people say about the US Open testing every aspect of your mental strength, but the US Open courses generally have been, you've got to hit the ball in the fairway and the green. The Masters, you need to be able to conjure a lot of brilliance. And I think that's why Seve was the first European to win there, and he had that magician's touch, and Jack Nicklaus had that mental strength to know that a lot of these players will not be able to cope with this. Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, probably one of the best short game players of all time. So it's not really one of these courses that you can just bomb it, gouge it and put it, because it'll just get you out. The 15th is a very interesting hole, because you think, okay, well, it's a par 5, I might have had a birdie or an eagle on 13. 14 is generally a reasonably benign hole, no water in the 14th, and then the 15th you think, well, it's my second shot.
Is that where Spieth melted down 2 years ago, the 15th?
Yes, off the top of my head. I know it's where Seve did an 80s.
Water on the left as you approach the green.
Yes, there's water all around the green, but you can actually overshoot the green, and there's water behind the green as well. So it's where Seve hit his ball in the water in 1986, and it's where Garcia eagled last year.
So that's the turning point, basically. That you need to be in contention there, and you need to nail 15. And
then you're into that par 3 16th with the water on the left-hand side. So there's just so many of these holes that are risk and reward, and the 18th, it's a much more hilly, demanding course than people think in terms of the television pictures. It's a lot more undulations than people would think.
Yeah, that's the first thing. Obviously, Joe Malloy, our colleague, is he just loves Masters Week, and the first thing he always says is look at the slope on that fairway and stuff whenever it comes on TV, because you rarely appreciate it when you're on TV. It's almost like the Tour de France when they're climbing. It's like you don't actually get to appreciate, as you said, the undulations on the actual course, and there's tons of them at Augusta. The other thing I want to point out is your betting slip to your right hand side here. Can we reveal what's on the betting slip?
We can reveal, folks, what is on the betting slip for the Masters. Now, that doesn't mean that my betting slip is better than anybody else's betting slip, but what's on the betting slip with Ball Sports, this is not virtual money. This is not a virtual €50 bet. This is a real €50 bet that I placed yesterday. The money's where the mouth is. 20 on McIlroy to win the Masters.
20 on McIlroy.
At 11-1.
Okay.
And then I had 5 each way on 3 players. I think McIlroy is my big win bet. But there's 87 players in the field. I think 60 of them are realistically in contention to appear at the Butler's Cabin on Sunday night. So the 3 each way, 5 each way on Patrick Reed at 50-1. Had an equipment change, is playing well, 2nd and 7th in his last 2 stroke play events. A Ryder Cup, a bit like Poulter, a Ryder Cup player that's been doing very well in the Ryder Cup. Never really contended in a major, but has won 5 times on tour, only 27 years of age. Patrick Reed, I think, is definitely somebody that could contend this week. Patrick Cantlay, tipping, betting, predicting, whatever you want to call it. Anticipation is everything. It's about seeing something before it happens. Patrick Cantlay was the best amateur in the world for over a year. He had a stress fracture in his back. He was out for nearly 3 years, and his best friend and caddy died in a hit-and-run accident when he was there. So tragically, he's had a lot to deal with. Patrick Cantlay has not missed a cut since he's come back on tour, effectively. Won in the autumn in October, November. He won that Shriners Hospitals for Children's Open. And he was 4th in Riviera, which is a very similar course to Augusta in terms of form picks and form translating. Patrick Cantlay, 66-1. Might not win, but could be a surprise this week and could be a good bet for first round leader. And the final one I picked is a Georgia native, Russell Henley, 5 each way at 80-1. 21st and 11th in his last 2 Masters appearances, so he's trending in the right direction. Shot a 65 at Houston last week, is brilliant on the dance floor, and in golf terminology, Eoin, that means he's good with a putter.
Yeah.
So Russell Henley, Patrick Cantlay, Patrick Reed, but Rory to win. That's my staking plan for the week.
I like the way you brought into the trend of Russell Henley. I find that Brandt Snedeker used to be the trendiest golfer to back for the Masters, and now Russell Henley is the trendiest golfer to back for the Masters.
Well, Branch Snedeker bawled his eyes out in 2008 when Trevor Immelman beat him, so I'm hoping that Russell Henley bawls in the right way.
Just to kind of clarify, we might actually make up a graphic of this, the Nathan Murphy versus John Duggan tipping battle, because you've tipped completely different people, so we can actually make this a battle. So Nathan yesterday went for Spieth and Day as his kind of two go-to big hitters, and then Bryson DeChambeau, as we've already established. You've gone for Rory McIlroy as your win, and then your €5 each way on Patrick Reed, Patrick Cantlay and Russell Henley. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Maybe
headlocks in the office zone.
Headlock. We might get Nathan to pick a fourth one. We'll do up a graphic and we'll throw it on Instagram or something.
I've also written a preview on offtheball.com about my memories of the Masters and what it means to me. And
what does it mean to you? We'll finish up on this.
It just means the start of a sporting summer. The weather has been cat. The weather's cat today, Eoin, in the country, and we've had Cheltenham, 17 Irish winners. We had Munster last weekend. We had the Grand Slam, Six Nations, and for me, I suppose all the other majors are played at different courses. Of course, the Open's got a rota, but the Masters is always that familiarity. It just reminds me of being a kid, young lad. Every April, it's generally around the time of the Grand National. Sunday nights, TV in the corner with your dad, watching Miles Duggan on RT, flicking over when the ad breaks come on to BBC and Peter Radis, and all these European winners, these European stories, when golf really wasn't a sport that was very popular. If you looked at the sports pages in the early 1980s in Ireland, golf wouldn't even register. So the fact that the Masters came in on your TV screens did change people's interest in golf, and the fact that Europeans started winning, Nick Faldo, Sandy Lyle, Seve, you had then Ian Woosnam, Al Athabal, great stories, and I think that precipitated an interest in golf that has translated in this country into an unbelievable success. I mean, you've Padraig Harrington, you've had Rory McIlroy, Graham McDowell and Darren Clark winning majors over the last 15 years, and the Ryder Cup coming to Ireland, and then we had 2 World Golf Championships.
Unprecedented.
And to think that, like this week, what I love about this week, you've got an amateur from Chile, Joaquin Niemann, you've got a brilliant golfer from India, Sharma, you've got like South Africans, Swedes, Australians, Fijians, Americans, and it's got a truly global reach. And Hao Tong Li, of course, from China. Imagine if he won. It would never be the same, but he's not going to.
Well said, John. As I say, offtheball.com, you can check out John's piece. We brought up a screenshot of it right there. Enjoy the week. I cannot wait for it. Like, despite the fact that we've had it's been the best month of sport of the year over the last 4 weeks or so, and it just gets better. I cannot wait. I just hope Tiger is involved at some point at Saturday. I'd even take Saturday, as long as he makes the cut and is whatever within 7 shots at lead. That would do me.
There are going to be surprises. There are going to be players that you wouldn't expect up there that are going to be up there, and they're the players you think will be. Some of them will be, and some of them won't be. But we guaranteed. I just don't want to see somebody run away with it.
Yeah,
that's what I don't want to see. I want to see a playoff.
Well, if somebody's going to run away with it, please let it be Rory, or please let it be Tiger at least. Let's give us something good to talk about if there is a runaway winner. But thank you very much, John. We'll chat to you again tomorrow morning after day 1 of the action. But first of all, before we wrap up, we caught up with Sean O'Brien yesterday ahead of Leinster's Pro 14 clash with Zebre this weekend, and the Tullow Tank praised the impact of his side's younger stars for both club and for country.
Yeah, again, it's important. Every home game is obviously kind of goes in your favour, home crowd, and you're not travelling away, and you can stay in your own bed for the night. So that'll be the plan, but bit of rugby to be played still.
We're chatting to James Ryan a few minutes ago. How impressed have you been with some of those younger players coming into the pack, especially? There seems to be a kind of a conveyor belt of forwards coming through in the province right now. Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant. Right through the pack, front rowers, second rowers, and loads of back rowers. The boys kind of they've really stepped in and filled probably a bit of a void that's been left there in terms of how well they've played and how consistently they're playing. So it's been brilliant. Of no fear whatsoever, those younger guys, and they're used to winning as well, which is very important.
Yeah, Sean O'Brien there speaking yesterday. We're going to continue with the Leinster theme now, because we spoke to Garry Ringrose also yesterday ahead of the Leinster versus Zebre Pro 14 clash this weekend. And the Ireland Centre spoke about his success upon return from injury and his international partnership with Connacht man Bundy Aki.
Certainly personally from my perspective, it's been a up and down year with a couple of injuries, but been lucky enough to come back and be involved in the last 2 games off the back of what was 2 injuries, as unlucky it was for Robbie and Chris, but it was off those 2 injuries, so I probably wouldn't have been involved otherwise. And then to kind of come back as well and manage to win a quarter-final against Saracens, it's, I consider myself lucky to be involved in the last couple of weeks that I have been.
As you say, if Chris hadn't picked up the injury, you might have been brought back in a bit more slowly, but as it worked out, very quickly during that break in the Six Nations, you were straight into the team after the injury. Yeah,
it was, it's a bit fortuitous from my perspective, and thankfully, I had the summer tour in Japan and was in a couple of weeks in training that I know all the systems and calls, and playing alongside Bundy as well was made that bit easier for me with how helpful he's been and how hard he works on and off the pitch. So thankfully I was able to kind of keep my head above water then in that Scotland game.
What's Bundy been like to play alongside? Because obviously he had various different centre partners during the Six Nations and he didn't miss a step with any of you.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's proven his quality with what you've just said. Certainly he's got the physical capabilities to run over someone, but I certainly underestimated how hard he works off the pitch and the analysis he does, and kind of the unit work we do about solving problems from training or matches or looking at opposition. So I certainly picked up a couple of things off him and learnt off him.
Yeah, Gary Ringrose there speaking to Will O'Callaghan ahead of Leinster versus Bray in the Pro 14 this weekend. You've been watching OTB AM this morning, which is brought to you with Ayr, the home of Ayr Sport. Get amazing live sporting content free with Ayr broadband. That is unfortunately where we have to leave things for this morning, but we will be back live on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter and all that good stuff from around 12:30 this afternoon. Because it is Thursday, it is Keith Andrews' show day. Nathan is the guy with the golden ticket this weekend, or this week rather. He'll be in studio with Keith from 12:30. Mark Ogden is going to be on the show. He'll be talking Anfield last night and Manchester City's woes, while Stephen Hunt will be on talking the Masters and his botched Augusta trip. If you haven't heard about that, it's one worth tuning in for to hear about. Tonight then, off the ball on News Talk from 7 o'clock, we've got Nathan and Kevin Kilban in studio. John Giles, as always, from 7:30. Legendary commentator Clive Tilsley will also be on chatting about his career in football, while Mayo star Andy Moran will be chatting to Nathan and Kevin, the Mayo bias once again after their league campaign. Tomorrow morning then, we're back from 7:45 on OTB AM. Adrian will be in this seat, I'll be in that seat. Kenny Cunningham will also be sitting on that side of studio, so it's going to be one you don't want to miss either. We'll chat to you then. Good luck for now.
OTB AM. In association with Ayr. Get Ayr Sport free with Ayr Broadband.